Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fort Detrick Business Development Series. Today's webinar is Gathering Market Intelligence Pre-RFP, and we have two fabulous instructors who have come back again to give us their insights on how to utilize market intelligence before the RFP is announced. Before we get started, let me give you a few teleconference notes first. My name is Gloria Larkin, and I am very happy to co-host these webinars with the Fort Detrick Business Development Office. Target Gov has stepped forth and working with Fort Detrick Business Development Office to give you the best information available so that you can win more government contracts. Now, since we are on a webinar format, we want you to know that you can send your questions in by email, and on every screenshot that you will see at the bottom will be the email address that you can use to send your questions in. And I'm going to tell it to you also, so jot this down. Anytime at all, whether you're hearing this live or later on as a recording, you can send your questions in 24/7 to the email is ask, A-S-K, at fdbdo.com. That's ask at fdbdo.com. The expert speakers and the folks at the Fort Detrick Business Development Office will answer your questions whenever you send them in so that you will be able to gain the information that you need. I'd like to welcome our expert from the Fort Detrick Business Development Office. Steve Lamberson is with us today. Welcome, Steve. We're very glad you're here.
Thank you, Gloria. Glad to be here.
We're going to look for more information from you at the end of today's session with an update of what's happening with the Fort Detrick Business Development Office and everything that is coming up on the very busy schedule that you've put together. Is there anything that you'd like to kick off with right now?
Well, first I'd like to say thanks to both Peggy and Kathy for making this presentation on gathering market intelligence, the pre-RFP presentation, available to us today. I would like to mention that the FDBDO has conducted many webinars on diverse topics that pertain to federal contracting, and each is now available for free download 24 hours, 7 days a week. And you can access them via our media library link that's located at our website, www.fdbdo.com. And today's webinar will also be posted on the media link in the near future. Thanks, Gloria.
Absolutely. If you have any problems at all while you're on the line with the webinar, please call our office number at 301-620-7071. And as Steve mentioned, we're recording the webinar today to make it available to you for access 24/7 at your convenience for you, your staff, your colleagues to be able to use this information that will be shared today. So let's go ahead and get started with today's session, Gathering Market Intelligence Pre-RFP. I would like to welcome our instructors. We have Kathy Minchew, who is president of Federal Insights, LLC. Ms. Minchew founded Federal Insights in 2007 as a sales and marketing consulting firm focused on the federal government and healthcare industries. She provides consulting, research, and capture support to a diverse group of clients including large companies, small businesses, and healthcare companies. Now, I don't believe it, though, Kathy, because it says for over 30 years. My goodness. You have advised federal government and commercial systems integrators on strategies and successful entry for new markets, business growth, and revenue generation. And I meant that in the best of ways because I know you have 30 years of experience, but you must have, of course, started when you were 10. Thanks for coming, Kathy.
Thank you.
And Peggy McShane is President and CEO of Net New Growth, LLC. Ms. McShane has more than 20 years' experience in the healthcare sector. She owns and leads a strategic marketing consulting firm providing strategy, outreach, and business development services to commercial, public sector, and nonprofit health clients. Her work includes market research, strategic account planning, and consulting in health IT. Both of these women bring an extraordinary level of expertise to today's topic. So let's go ahead and turn the screen over to both of you if you'd like to get started with today's session.
All right, thank you very much. What we wanted to do today was focus on initially market intelligence. And why is this important, and how do you gather market intelligence? So initially, many times when you're working in the federal government world, a lot of times you will get opportunities that come your way. Some of them you'll have lots of time to gather intelligence on. You might have a year, maybe 2 would be even better. And then many times you've got a couple of weeks because the government is trying to get requirements out the door and doesn't have a lot of time to give industry days or one-on-ones. And so how do you do it when you are literally in a very constricted time frame? So initially, the reason why you want to get market intelligence is because you want to build the best response to the government. And by best, I mean the winning response to the government. So you increase your chances or your win probability, because in any company, you have limited dollars to spend on bid and proposal. So where do you start? Where do you go for market research? How do you convert that research into intelligence? And then how do you convert that intelligence to pipeline activity? That's what we're going to focus on today.
Hi, Kathy. This is Peggy. I'd also like to add that this is very critical to high probability winning work in federal government contracting. It cannot be understated. Any business, when you enter this market, needs to understand the market prior to starting to sell. Leveraging some of the information we have stated on our previous webinars, know your customer, their mission, their needs, what they're buying, and their budgets. And we're going to go into a little bit of that in the next few slides.
Okay. So why is gathering market intelligence so important? With the limited dollars that you do have, especially in small companies versus large companies, you can't bid on everything. You cannot bid on every opportunity that comes across your desk. So you have to make a decision on what you're going to go after, and you have to defend that decision that it's not wired. And what I mean by wired is that the government hasn't already pre-selected who they want, and they're just getting you as the second or the third bidder because they're required to do that. So you need that information to defend going forward with this bid, and spending, frankly, the time and the energy, because many of these opportunities, if they take a very long time, even over years, and we see that a lot today because the government isn't ready, the contract shop doesn't have the time, and they spend a lot of time extending the RFP date when it's going to come down and extending the contract if there's an incumbent so that they can meet that RFP date. The other thing that's important why you need to get this intelligence is, are you going to prime, are you going to sub? Are you going to lead this opportunity, or are you going to be a partner with somebody else? And frankly, that depends on many things. That depends on whether it's on a contract vehicle you can't prime on. It depends on whether the program manager in the government feels that you're the right partner to prime it. It depends on whether they put it in a set-aside program for small business. So even though you really do have all the qualifications to bid it, you're not allowed to because you have to be a hub zone or an A-Day or a service-disabled veteran small business. And then pulling together your partners and your key employees, understanding who currently is in with this customer that would be a good partner that would help you understand where they're going, especially if the customer is not allowing you to meet with them one-on-one. And many times there are leaders or key personnel slots that you don't have in your company, and you really need to start looking for those people, either with the incumbent, if there's an incumbent, with a former government program employee, etc. Then you also need to develop what you think the concept of operations is going to be. You really need to make sure that all the pieces of this opportunity you understand, and you can validate that not only with maybe something if there was a draft RFP or there's an RFI, but you can validate with that with the customer to fill any technology or partner gaps that your company as a prime, if you decide to prime, or if you decide to partner with somebody else, that you can point out to the prime that this is something that this opportunity is going to include, and I'm the perfect match for that. Win themes and discriminators for the proposal. What makes you unique? Dozens and dozens of companies can bid these. Why are they going to choose you over somebody else? If it's not just meet the technical grade, but also be above that, what innovative things are you going to propose beyond the proposal to discriminate you in that way? To make sure that when you get to writing the proposal, all of your proposal writers and reviewers are writing to the same message. And then any issues that need to be overcome. A lot of times you try to sell your technologies or solutions, but which ones are you going to sell and how are you going to sell them? You really want to tell the story how what you've done in the past has helped other organizations overcome the same issues, and that you can help them through this partnership and this opportunity. But unless you know what those issues are, you could be focused in the wrong areas.
Thanks, Kathy. I'd also like to state that everything you just said, it's critical to have that done months prior to the RFP. Everything that we are discussing today is gathering the information before the RFP is released, so you are ahead of the game. It can't be understated again, the need to spend time up front. It will cost more later in time and resources if you are trying to chase this after the RFP has hit. So making that upfront investment is critical.
So a couple of more points on why gathering market intelligence is so important. How are you going to build your price to win model? What kind of overhead rates are you going to look for? What kind of locations, what kind of facility locations do you have to have? Does it have to be near the customer? Does it have to be or not? Do you want a particular, if it's a wage determination contract, are there certain SEA labor rates in the country that make you more cost competitive? Do you have to worry about maybe your RAP rate, your overhead, and your G&A in comparison to the incumbent is a strong differential? So what would you do internally, benefits-wise, maybe bidding another different part of your company? And understanding, are these things you have to worry about, or frankly, does that not really matter? It's really about the best solution, not the cost. Understanding who the source evaluation board is. How powerful is the contracting office versus the program office? Who is going to make the final decision? Who's going to lead the technical team? What is the role of the contract shop versus the program shop going to be? Is the program shop going to be the final decision maker, or is the contract shop just going to be looking to make sure you're technically compliant, doing the down select and then turning it over to the program shop to make that decision? All of these things are important in the way in which you respond to the request for proposal, request for task, to make sure you're hitting upon what evaluation criteria is most important to the people who are selecting you. And then, very important, how are you going to influence this RFP? What we're hearing more and more today in the government contracting world is they want your feedback, even down to the fact that, hey, you've proposed 6 CLINs, you really should be proposing 8 CLINs. They want you to help them because, frankly, after this is awarded, they want you to be successful. So you need to understand what is that message, what can you influence, what do you want to influence, so it increases your win probability and takes some of the competition out of the game because things that you have suggested showed up in the proposal, and that helped you to be a better competitor. And, of course, your partners for teaming and their win story value. Understanding why is XYZ company a better partner than another one based upon what you're learning that the customer would value more.
That's great, Kathy. I'd also, this really helps any business by going through this type of diagnostic at looking at those 10 different points will help you in differentiating your proposal response. You really do want to look better and different than anyone else out there. This will really catch the evaluator's attention and really answer the question, why should we select your business over the others? So where do you go for this market research? I mean, where is it, and how do I get to it? I'd really like to emphasize that October, November, and mid-December is the best time. So we're really entering in the best time to do research. You really want to pull your strategies together so that when things get to a very tactical time, which is usually in the 3rd and 4th quarter of the fiscal year, you are prepared. So moving into the season here of the 1st quarter of a fiscal year is really the best time. I would also state that the government itself is the best source for data, which you would then use for information and intelligence. You really want to dig into the federal government budgets and going down into as much detail as you can to determine where the numbers, where the dollars are going, where incumbents are, where there's vulnerabilities. With this new congressional actions with all of the budgets, you really do also want to look closely and stay on top of what's going on in Congress. It's just critical right now. The government also issues a lot of things considered pre-market where they are asking for your feedback. And you'll see that also in Federal Register where they're asking for public comment. Many times that's how you can get in front of the opportunity when they're asking for comment. And we will get into how to then produce that into white papers and marketing collateral. But you really want to stay on top of the Federal Register for that intelligence gathering. The Government Accounting Office and the Inspector General reports. When the government has problems or when there's issues, that usually means they're looking for solutions to help them resolve these problems. And that typically does turn into opportunities for federal government contractors. So again, staying on top of what the government is saying their problems are, there may be some new opportunities coming out of those reports. Customer briefings. Sometimes the best intelligence comes from when you are debriefed from, say, perhaps a winning proposal or a losing proposal. You can often get a lot of information from what the customer thinks was good or not so good from previous proposals. So again, going straight to your customers or your potential customers and asking them. Congressional testimony, again, a lot of times that is tied into the Government Accounting and Inspector General reports because That's usually when you have a congressional testimony. It's not always a good thing, but government needs to fix problems, and it is usually done, again, with federal government contracts. Another area that a lot of contractors use is the market research databases, and these are usually commercial. There are, I guess, a few free sources out there, but you usually need a subscription for these databases. And there's the great thing about the databases include not only a one-stop place to get government information, but they're also do some of their own analysis and provide additional insights. So you may want to consider that. Webinars and conferences, really getting that kind of information. I do it weekly, just trying to stay on top of all of the change that's going on. So a lot of interaction, both virtually as well as face-to-face. You really just need to be out in the market to get this information. And lastly on this slide is former agency consultants. Kathy and I work across a network of a lot of folks that are doing business development and marketing in the government, and there are a lot of former government officials that are supporting clients, and you want to make them part of your network as well. They can provide a lot of great insights that you just don't get if you haven't been within the government itself. So the last point on this slide I'd like to make is you really want to get as close to government sources as possible. You do want to validate that information, but you can also be misled through a lot of speculation, and you should really try to stay away from those type of sources. Kathy, anything to add?
Yes. Some of the other things that you can think about as well is understanding, before we talked about understanding who the source evaluation board, who's going to be evaluating you, finding out what they're talking about, what their passion is about. Are they speaking out about a lot about social media, or are they speaking about mobile applications? So understanding the folks that are involved in this bid, what their passion is about. Attending not only industry days and events surrounding this opportunity, but anywhere your customer is out there and engaging with them. It also helps you to very quickly at those industry days and any program surrounding that customer in one room meet a lot of partners that are servicing that customer today. And then on the former agency consultant, the only thing that I'll add there that's really, really important to that is many times when you're responding to an RFP, RFPs are not always created from scratch. Matter of fact, I don't think anyone is ever created from scratch. They're all brought together from boilerplate. And if you look at the Q&A and many of the proposals that come out, you'll see, oh, delete that, that didn't apply. Oh, delete that, that didn't apply. Well, if you aren't understanding of this agency and where they're going and what they're doing, it's very difficult for you to read a request for proposal and understand something really doesn't make sense. So using that former agency consultant who's been working in the agency, understands the lingo, understands the operations, to help you sift through some of the sort of mistakes that the government makes in a rush to get things out the door is another way that you can use them, in addition to helping you potentially get meetings with the program manager if it becomes difficult.
So, again, where do you go for this research? On our previous webinars, we have stated over and over, it's really you need to develop relationships, and people buy from people. So where do you go for that if you can't necessarily get in to see the customer directly to ask those questions? Well, a great source of information prior to going in and doing your research there is, go to the media, both your traditional press, find out what has been recently in the press about that program. Everything's being archived these days, so if it's not something that happened today or yesterday, you could probably find out in the past few months what has been said, what are the hot topics there. And increasingly, social media is a form that many people who are doing business development are using. I mean, not only to develop virtual relationships, but also to do their research. And some of the greatest tools, of course, is Google, and LinkedIn is primarily used in the business community. So you really do want to Google whatever you can about the person or the program or the budget or anything that has happened in that particular area. And then LinkedIn, not only the individuals involved or, say, potentially the incumbent, but also what is very powerful about LinkedIn is the groups. So I encourage you to join as many groups as possible that are in your subject matter area or within your social network. There's a lot of exchange of information. You can really stay on top of what the hot topics are at any given time through that. And I do encourage those that necessarily shy away from social media to kind of get out of your comfort zone and start to do the interacting, because the more you can contribute, the more you're going to get out of that form of resource there. And again, the OSDBU offices, the Office of Small Disadvantaged Business offices, those are a great source of information. I primarily go to those meetings to find out, number one, the forecast at any given time. If there's any timely information coming out of the government agencies, sometimes you'll pick that up there in those meetings. But you're also going to find out who else is potentially going after the same work. Or it could be not only from a competitor's perspective, but also a partnering perspective. Many large businesses do come to do networking with small businesses because they are looking for specific expertise. So that is a very valuable resource to attend those meetings. They are usually sold out very quickly, and I do encourage you to try to stay on top of when those meetings occur. And the FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act, you will also see this information published on those databases, the purchase databases. But that's additional information. You can really find out what, if there was a problem with a program or, say, an incumbent, that kind of information is usually released by the government through Freedom of Information Act requests. And I think we've already really discussed the former agency consultants, but again, they have been a great resource to me and Kathy and others that have been successful in this area. Kathy, anything else to add there?
Yes, with regards to LinkedIn, there's been actually, you could do a whole webinar on how you use LinkedIn to go after an opportunity, but one of the things that I see it used not a lot for, but could be, is just that whole idea of getting intelligence from current employees in the contract shop and in the incumbent or any of the partners. Linking in with some of these folks, who are in the middle of this program, calling them up and interviewing them for jobs, legitimate jobs that you have. What you'll find is many of the program people who aren't in the business development organization, when they interview, they're trying to put their best foot forward, and they tell you all sorts of great intel about what's going on with the program that they're currently involved with. And also, what I think a lot of people overlook is the network of those people. Who do they know? Because there you have it, is practically the whole team that's engaged in the program. In addition to that, don't be uncomfortable about linking in with people you don't know. Link in with a lot of these former government folks. They actually are open to that. They don't even need to know you. And LinkedIn is not just who you know. LinkedIn is who you want to know. So focusing on that. As far as the OSDBU offices for each of the federal government agencies, you need to be very careful of what you expect out of them. I don't think I've ever met one who is there to help you. What their job is to do is help get those agencies' goals of small business to where they need to be. So when you go and you meet with an OSBU, what you need to say to them first is, what is their role? What are they trying to achieve? Not what they can do for you and how you can help them. So don't go in there not knowing what their hub zone percentage is for the organization. You can go to SBA.gov and you can get the past years, how they're meeting their women-owned, how they're meeting their small. So if you're a small business, it's very important for you to know that. If you're a large business, it's very important to know what they care about, where they're running or having a hard time finding in partners, so that if you have a choice on what kind of partner you can bring on board and you're having a hard time finding them, they might be able to help you there. On the FOIA part, many of these agencies are way behind on FOIA. Some of the FOIA requests are 4 years behind in some of these agencies. But it's important if you can get that information to get it, because you're guaranteed your competition is requesting things like the contract award for the incumbent or modifications or reports that were done by consultants that are driving the strategy for the opportunity. And I'm funny that we put the former agency consultants on here. I think it's psychological because I think so many organizations overlook these folks. And where do you find them? On LinkedIn. The former CIOs, everybody who is in government when they come outside, if they decide not to go back into a company, becomes a consultant, you should be tracking these people as they leave the organization you want to build a relationship with and engaging them as soon as you can, because if you don't, your competitors are. So how do you convert all this research? You've done all this work. You've gotten all this information. How do you convert it into intelligence? Meaning, how do you convert it into actionable things that you can go to influence what the bid you're about to bid on? Well, it helps you with your OSBU meetings, because if you go out and you look at their forecasts, which are all online across the government, then you know where to focus. So instead of just going in and saying, hey, I'm at XYZ company, help me, or here's what I do, you go in and say, hey, I see that you have these needs right now. I see these opportunities are coming down. I want to come talk to you about these specific opportunities. It also helps you if you want to go and visit the government program manager. We do, as part of another organization I belong to, we do hundreds of interviews with government every year, and we ask the question at the end of the interview, what is the message to industry, how they can interact with you better, and the comment 99.9% of the time is do your homework. Know what my issues are. Know what my problems are. I don't care what you sell. I don't care about your technologies. I don't care about your solutions unless they help me solve my problem. And I pretty much, whenever I'm trying to get government meetings on behalf of my clients, if I focus and do the research on the issue that I know that government program manager is dealing with, unless contracts is jumping in there blocking meetings, almost 100% of the time they will meet with you. And they'll meet with you, and what's great about that it won't just be them. They'll bring everybody on their team, sometimes across the entire agency, who's struggling with that problem. So all of a sudden the audience of a one-on-one becomes a one-on-12, which is awesome for you. The same thing with the CIOs. I think a lot of times we focus on the contracting offices and the program managers to go visit, but we also need to understand the CIO's perspective. If you're going to bid a technology that isn't in congruence in where they're going in their architecture or where they're going in the enterprise licenses that they're buying across the organization, it would not be helpful to you in your bid. You could be downgraded because you didn't understand that. So getting an understanding of what are the technologies these agencies are procuring in the past, what are they focused on, and validating that so when you visit with the CIOs that you understand the message. The contracting office, it isn't always easy when they get thrown these procurements and are told they need to have it awarded in 30 days or 2 months sometimes. So they need to be aware of who you are and what you have to offer and why and what past performance you have that make you a good partner with them. So how do you know all of that? How do you know what they're looking at? A lot of this research you're doing helps you with that. For networking events, when you're going to any networking event, if you can get the list of who's coming in advance, it's really, really important because it helps you target who you're going to meet at those events, and then understanding what those organizations, whether it's government or industry, care about, so you're targeting your message there and essentially your elevator speech to them focused on what problems you're solving, what issues you're solving today, not what technology or project or products you're selling. And then again, for association, committee, and program participation, if you join an association, you join a committee, sometimes it's overwhelming. They have so many things going on in there. You want to target what is it that they're focused on that's going to help you take all this intelligence that you've gotten and research that you've gotten and utilize it to further your knowledge within the bid to get better connections within the government and industry. And then this is continuous. There is no one, okay, now I got the answer and it's the answer. This has to continue on and on and on because people make changes in decisions. They make changes in strategy. Their budgets change. So it's not a one-time thing. It has to be continuous research until, frankly, you win the award or lose the award. Peggy?
Yeah, and I'd like to add that, and this is something Kathy, I know, mentions all the time, you really want to lead with what is the business need, not your capabilities. So by doing this research, you're going to be a lot smarter on what the business is as opposed to coming in and selling directly your specific capability or service. And that is what the government wants to hear. How are you going to help them fix their problems? Not so much on what your technology or your service does in terms of general knowledge. So the smarter you are, the more interesting this is for your buyer. So pipeline activity. Kathy, did you want?
Yeah. So how do you convert this intelligence into pipeline activity? How do you take all this information you're finding and get it into your pipeline? Because we all know at the end of the day, your pipeline is what you're going to pursue. Your pipeline is your forecast for your organization that, yes, I'm looking at enough opportunities to garner the revenue I need in the coming years. And frankly, the number that is used at the lowest level is that you should have 4 times the amount of opportunities in your pipeline that you think you need to grow your business in the direction that you're trying to achieve. And what that means is that you have a 25% chance of win probability of everything you're looking at. And how do you do that? Well, first of all, it's all about, do they have the money? Do they have the funds? You have to understand their budgets and where they're going. And frankly, in this very political time where we've got potential changeover in Congress and maybe in the administration next year, and things like hot topics like health IT are going to be highly at risk, the least riskiest opportunities to go after is current work, recompetes. Programs that have already either are in the pilot stage or are pretty much into rollout because the funding has already been allocated. The projects that are, hey, we'd like to do this, hey, there was an act that was passed that says we've got to look into this, but there's no funding, those are going to be more difficult. So when you want to focus where you're going to go, focus where the agency has already gotten the money. Sources sought. take a lot of those sources sought seriously. I don't know how many times I talk to an agency, and especially the small business advocate, and I say to them, how can I participate in this opportunity? And the comment is, well, did you respond to my sources sought? And companies will say, well, I'm too busy, or I didn't have the time. A sources sought is not an RFP. It has nothing to do with compliance. It has to do with getting your name in the game. Many times what happens, even if you respond to a sources sought and you read it and you go, I can't do all of this. I can do part of this. I'll bring on partners later to do the rest of it. You should still respond, because what I've been told by many of the leadership in an agency, in the procurement shop, the OSBU shop, they all sit around and go, I just read this company. I don't think they're a right fit for this sources sought, but I'm going to contact them on that web opportunity. I'm going to contact them on this construction opportunity, whatever you're focused on, because frankly, that's the better fit for them. So have that sources sought available, actually a draft for that, a boilerplate as we have done for that, and use all this market intelligence on how you respond to that, because you know what this organization is looking at. Because remember, the people who are reading that aren't just the people looking at that one opportunity. They're looking at all of their opportunities, and there might be a fit for something else. RFI responses, again, not only making sure that they address what's in there, but make sure you hit all those hot buttons about you. What type of small business you are. If you're HubZone or SDVOSB or 8A, use that RFI response not to just respond to that sources sought, dot the I's and cross the T's, but also to promote you and anything else about you. It's sort of free marketing for you. White papers, if you know an agency, an organization that you want to bid with is struggling with an issue and you've got the answer, write a white paper about it. It could be 1 page. It could be 2 pages. You write a white paper and say, hey, I heard you might be looking at this issue. I wrote this white paper for another customer, even if you did or not. You wrote it about something else you had done, and you helped them. You'll see many times white papers, if they're targeted right, all of a sudden your lingo in that white paper is showing up in the RFP that's coming out. So use that as an ability to influence. Marketing, generic marketing, you can't say enough about marketing. And marketing is not some big ad campaign. It's not having the latest, greatest website, although I do have to tell you, the first place they look at is they go to ccr.gov. And if you don't have the right NAICS codes in there, if you don't have the points of contact in there, if your website, which is the first thing they link on, isn't up to date, if you want to be somebody that's bidding health information technology and you don't even have the word health on your website, or if you're doing great work in their agency and you don't even mention in a case study you're doing work in there on your website, that can really, really hurt you. So make sure that the marketing collateral you have, that your website, anything of the low-cost items that you have that you don't have to spend a lot of money on are done well and reflect the current state of where you are, not where you were a year ago. And then lastly, it's all about building relationships. We cannot say this enough. It's who you know. So be on the street with your business development and face-to-face meetings. Don't do it from your office. A lot of us don't like to get out there. You got to get out there. And frankly, when you're out there in an event and you know that's not your personality, link up with somebody who is. If you've got a person in your company who's in operations, who is passionate about what you do and loves to get out there and talk to people, bring them with you. Because, you want to have a goal when you're at these events, when they're out there talking. I'm going to walk away with 5 people I've talked to where I've explained the issues I'm solving and I have follow-up with them. on an opportunity that they as a customer is pursuing or as a partner in the government is pursuing. Peggy?
Wow, Kathy, there's not much I can really add here other than saying for small businesses, the sources sought notices, the RFI responses, they are critical. This is how you can truly help to influence, even though you do not have the client relationship or the customer relationship. This is how you can form your first impression and then follow up to get those kind of calls. And I agree with Kathy, the marketing is critical. You really have to not only tell the customer in a targeted way, but you really need to reflect that you are in this business, that you're committed to doing this. And it is a highly competitive market right now, so you really do need to look your best. Your website is your storefront. That's the first place folks do go before and after they meet with you. So keep that website as fresh as possible.
Yeah, and one other thing before we turn it back, when you're writing your RFI response to a source of thought, at the same time you should be finding out who the program manager is and getting a meeting. It is amazing to me how many people respond to a source of thought, prepare their response, and then they say, I never heard back from anybody. And then they found out it was awarded to somebody else. So it isn't just a written response, it's also your ability to get a meeting with the customer as well.
Kathy and Peggy, you have done a fabulous job today, and we have questions just rolling in. I'd like to bring Steve back, if you don't mind, and have him ask some questions before we sign off for the day. Would that be okay with you?
Yes.
Yep.
Perfect. Steve Lamberson is a business development specialist at the Fort Detrick Business Development Office. And Steve, you're manning the emails right now. Would you like to start with some of the questions?
Yeah, you bet. And I do have a question that's came in from Ben. Ben asks, how do you validate conflicting information between the databases like input says versus industry or versus a customer? How do these databases get their information?
Well, frankly, that is a good question because, for these organizations to be successful, they have to hire junior people. And frankly, what they're doing is they're calling the government contracting officer and saying, hey, when's the RFP coming out, et cetera. They're also, you have to note that they're at a point in time, and their job is just to get any answer, put it in the database, and be done. So I actually tell people you can never trust, as far as procurement timeline, what's in that database. You can trust a document. You can trust anything that is factual. But when it comes to getting the procurement timeline, I have actually read procurements where they say they still don't know when it's coming out, and it's already been out and awarded. So you've got to be very careful of that. So think about it this way. It is the customer's comment about where the procurement timeline is. Nobody but the customer's timeline. And if you don't get it directly from the customer, which is the contracting officer in this case, because once the program goes into procurement, it is procurement that drives the train. So you have to be very, very careful about that and not assume that the answer in there you get is the answer. Peggy?
I agree. Just to really validate the information, I like to go to at least 2 or 3 sources, and the preference is a government source over speculation or something that may have been overheard at a conference.
All right, well, thank you both. I do have another question from VJ. How do you research who are the best partners to go with in pursuing opportunities versus just whomever you know?
I think that it's easy if you're looking at something and you get a nice large company or a very name brand company that calls you and say, hey, do you want to be on my team? And many times I have to tell clients that I work with, whoa, hold the phone. Just because that company contacted you, how do you know that they can win this? So you have to, first of all, you have to do some homework on your own right. Who do you think the top 4 to 5 players are going to be? And you need to proactively approach them. And not only do you tell them your story about why you would be a good partner, but you need to make them tell you why do they think they can win. And come prepared with 5 to 6 questions you're going to ask them that you think are crucial. If they don't understand this, if all that intelligence that you've built, if this intelligence you've built, it's new to them, then they aren't the right partner because they're not doing what you believe they need to do to win this. So don't be reactionary. Don't be awed by somebody big coming to you. Don't feel just because somebody has alerted you to an opportunity that you're bound to bid with them. If the opportunity they alerted you to is something that is public, you have the right to talk to anybody you want to, even if you have an NDA on the call. An NDA means that anything I tell you about my organization you can't share, but an NDA non-disclosure agreement doesn't mean that any public information has to be kept in that conversation with them.
And I would also add it's critical, particularly with a product, when there is a product involved, to closely evaluate the requirements and any certifications the government is requiring of the product. So really do a lot of thorough analysis. Many companies have partnered with, with what they thought was the right solution, and it turned out that the government really wanted something else. So you need to be careful there.
And I'd like to add to this because we have companies come in all the time, and they're looking for partners. They're looking for companies that have specific past performance or relationships with a federal customer that can help them. And maybe they have a small business set aside, but they don't have that pertains to a solicitation, but they don't have that key past performance or relationship with the customer. So they sit down with me, and I show them how they can identify these type of customers or these type of companies that have received federal funds from specific government clients. And then from there, you can find points of contact and emails and phone numbers. And these are through a variety of websites that's available to all of us, usaspending.gov, with CCR, with what the Federal Funding Accountability Transparency Act has a website. So there's a lot of resources out there to help research companies that have specific past performance. And
and adding on to that, that's a very good point, is that what you do have to know from your customer, the end buyer of this, what you have to know, is it more important that I've worked in this agency before, even if I haven't worked on this type of work before, or is it more important that I have the past performance in government doing this type of work? I can tell you the majority of time I hear it's more important that you've done this work before anywhere in government than it is just that you've done work in my agency that might not be this work. But you need to know from the customer's perspective what's important so that if you're looking to join a team, you're telling the right story. And if you're looking to select a partner, you're getting the right partner from the customer's perspective.
Steve, I have a few questions that have come in. If we have a few more minutes, would it be okay to roll into them?
Take it away.
Okay, great. I have a question that came in from Marcy. She says, this is a lot of data. Do you recommend any way to keep it organized, a CRM system? I'm using Outlook with Excel, but not so successfully.
Well, I think that a lot of organizations spend a lot of time buying, I don't want to give credence to one over another, but buying a lot of these databases that held their pipeline in Salesforce.com or something like that. My biggest problem, it's not the database you hold it in, it's what do you do with the data once it's in there. So until you have a regimented process for how you review these bids, like weekly pipeline meetings, pipeline meetings every 2 weeks, you really can start out with an Excel spreadsheet and save the time of buying some complicated system and then nobody ever reviews the data. So I usually say keep 2 types of databases. You have and again, it can be an Excel spreadsheet. It can be very inexpensive. You have an Excel spreadsheet that covers all of the calls you're making, what we call your call plan. You might say that you want to work in a particular agency, and this partner is very strong in there, so you need to go meet with them. So maybe they're in the call plan, but you haven't really identified any opportunities yet. And then once you have identified opportunities that you want to focus on, you need to put it in your pipeline, again, which should be an Excel spreadsheet, which will have things on like, who is the customer, who's the point of contact, what message do we want to get in there, what's the status, what's our next steps, when's the RFP come out, what is our partners. So you can do it in a very simple format. But if you don't have the process moving to a more complicated system, which frankly has dozens and dozens and more fields to fill in, isn't going to do you any good if you don't take what you have today and have a process so you execute on that. What I tell folks is that if you have to have 4 times as many opportunities in there, in any discussion, you're not going to be able to cover them all. So every pipeline meeting needs to talk about the top 5 to 10 opportunities that are closest to coming to closure as far as bidding them or after you've bid them, any follow-up on them. And every meeting you say, what else can we do to increase the win probability on this opportunity? If you don't do that, any sort of database isn't really going to help you.
That is excellent advice. And Kathy Minchew and Peggy McShane, 2 extraordinarily experienced women who have given you a wonderful amount of expertise to help you position yourself better by gathering market intelligence pre-RFP. And this is just one more in the series of the full Fort Detrick Business Development Office webinars. Steve, would you like to wrap up today and tell us what else is happening at the Fort Detrick Business Development Office?
Yeah, I'd like to share some feature benefits about our office. Fort Detrick Business Development Office, we are a free service. It's available to those companies interested in competing on federal contracts, specifically those contracts that are in support of Fort Detrick. We provide education and training to companies of all levels of federal contracting experience, such as this webinar on gathering market intelligence for RFPs. In addition to training services, the FDBDO provides market information on solicitations that are released in support of Fort Detrick. Now, timing is very important when addressing a solicitation, so we match the solicitations with those companies that are registered with the FDBDO. And registration and all FDBDO services are free, and you can register your company at our website. Again, that is www.fdbdo.com. Our next presentation, Gloria, if that's okay, I'd like to throw that in.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, we have another webinar presentation that's coming up on the schedule. This one is going to be on grant solicitations. It's titled Grants 101, Writing the Grant. Now, we don't have the exact date for this at the moment, but it is going to take place in November. So keep your eyes on our calendar of events that's located at our website for that exact date. And you can see the complete list of all webinars and event activities located at our website, the www.fdbdo.com.
And I'd like to plug that as well. Please sign up for the newsletters and announcements that Steve and his whole team send out, because they're just full of events that the FDBDO focuses in on, sponsors, and all related to business development opportunities and activities in and around Fort Detrick. It is a wealth of information. I love pushing out the announcements even further. Once I receive them from your office, you put together a really solid listing of activities. Thank you very much for everything you do, Steve.
Thank you very much, Gloria.
Absolutely. Kathy and Peggy, I know that you two have to go, and it's time for us to wrap up from today's session. Right now on your screen, you're seeing Kathy's contact information and Peggy's contact information as well. Feel free to call them directly, send them emails with your questions, get in touch with Steve Lamberson directly at the Fort Detrick Business Development Office as well. And my name is Gloria Berthold-Larkin. I'm with Target Gov. We're also here to help you. You've got the experts at your beck and call. Email us, call us. We're here to help you, all four of us. So thank you, everyone, for participating in the session. Stay tuned for more information from the Fort Detrick Business Development Office. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.